Well, hello, everybody. Good day. Happy Sunday. It's July 28th at 10:21 a.m. local. Haven't done one of these in a while. I do this, as I've stated many times before, to create rich transcripts for providing a contextual reference for my thoughts and ideas for training language model and AI. I feel like I've said so much at this point, and I've covered so many of the big topics like free will and consciousness and AI and markets and parenting and friendship and love and spirituality. I feel like I've got more than I need at this point for that goal. And as I'm not really trying to do anything with the channel or sort of public journaling generally, and I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, I expect the frequency of these to continue sort of falling off. It's been about a month or so since I did this last. But I do really value this this practice, and I like the activity of sort of ordering all my thought for public sharing. So I don't plan to ever really give it up. For about the last month, I've been really focused on meditation. And so that might be a fun thing to talk about a bit. And then I thought maybe I'd go over some recent tweets and a fun conversation I had recently with friends about language. So how about the order? I think the language one will be easiest to knock out quickly. Let's do that one. I was talking with some friends in a chat app, and the topic of spelling and grammar comes up often. Good friend in a conversation who really values if you misuse there, if you meant to say THEY apostrophe RE and instead you write THERE, it will be pointed out. And there's been several times we've talked about it. And every once in a while I come up with a new way of describing how I think about it. And so I dive into it again. For me, without getting into all of it, language rules are very important and useful and critical for early development. When a word sounds the same with three different spellings and means three different things, very important to understand the rules of that spelling and how to use the word properly. And when you're in the workplace, you'll often be judged if you get it wrong, especially with somebody who doesn't know you really well. If they read an email of yours and you make one of those mistakes, they'll immediately attach that as sort of like a filter to everything you say around it as, oh, this is a person who doesn't know how to properly use there. I find in life at this stage I'm in, no longer very useful. So when I'm typing in like Discord and I misspell one of those words, it becomes a nuisance to go back and correct it, especially when I'm interacting with someone who has developed a like ability to evaluate the tokens before and after. So everything, all of the context around the usage, and out desired intention, and accurately interpret what somebody's trying to tell me. That's trivial now. When somebody does it, I see it, and often the way my cognitive works goes, they automatically swaps out the there that fits the rest of the context for how they use it. And what I've done, largely through meditative practice, is to let go of any other, like that judgment filter that I used to associate. Because now I recognize where a lot of people are like me for expedience and efficiency in a like a text or a chat, are choosing to ignore the mistake. Like if you're constructing a sentence and you're typing it all out on your, especially if you're on your phone, and you misspell it, and autocorrect shifts it to the improper usage, it's a hassle to go back and fix it. And so for expedience, I won't. Now, this serves as an irritation for another friend of mine who is capable of the same sort of higher order, real-time spell check as he's reading my comments, but it triggers that judgment impulse and the compulsion to call it out and be like, you meant there, with the correct usage. And so I kind of dove into it philosophically, and I pointed out that, if you test me on that, I will consistently always get that right. I know the proper use, but I choose to let it go for expedience and because it no longer serves me. Well, it's funny that like where that predictably went is, well, then just chaos. These rules don't matter. No, these rules really matter. Like for early childhood development and for early professional, that knowledge really served me and was vital for garnering respect, or at least level consideration of the context around those words when I would use them. It would have been way too much of a distraction. It would have really hurt me at that stage of my, like I said, childhood and then second childhood, 20 to 40. Like I really needed that foundation in order to survive and thrive with others that would do that filtering technique that I described, and that would translate automatically to judgment for anything else I was doing. I mean, as a manager of a bunch of people with higher education, that would have really been an impediment for me at that stage of life. But now at this stage of life, where I've achieved sort of like a temporal freedom, like a sustained unemployment. Not very grandiose, but sustained unemployment. I no longer need that validation from anyone. I don't need it. I certainly shouldn't need it from my friends who know I know the proper usages. What does it become from first principles to be entirely attached to like being a stickler about. Well, they were required initially for sense making, and I've evolved the ability to no longer require that granularity. Like I can always make proper sense of the usage as intended. Functionally, they're not useful. My neural net has, with that capacity, no longer puts any value on that. While at the same time critically being sort of grateful and appreciative of the grounding and foundation it gave me reach that level. Like I never would have gotten to this place where contextually I can always make sense. Like a large language model. If you misspelled there, the large language model is doing, or the spell check is doing what I'm describing. It's adapted the ability to look at how you're using the words from the words you use around it and going, the message creator intended, or the prompt, the author of the prompt that I'm reading meant to use H-E-I-R, not E-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E, or vice versa. I see that as a strength in the model. It gave the model the capability to never need me to do that properly. Now, functionally, I no longer require this ability. So how does it serve? Well, that knowledge would allow me to continue doing filtering on what other people say. But at this stage of life, at 46, a few days ago, I no longer put any value on, or I actually can see how those judgments, especially when if you apply them to somebody who does know proper usage, but for reasons of expedience on whatever interface they're using, chooses not to go back and fix one that was utilized improperly, then I'm allocating a judgment improperly, and it becomes a distraction for evaluating what the person was trying to tell me. And that seems like a dick move. It just seems like, why? Like, what value is there? It's such a distraction. Now suddenly we're having a conversation about language rules instead of something we were originally talking about. And also, it goes beyond that, because now if I haven't evolved past the ability to do this, I'm now applying a judgment to everything they said around that mistake. And that judgment of it not being valuable because of the mistake is not valid, potentially. Maybe it is, but there's a good chance it's not, especially with somebody who's older and knows better, but it just doesn't give a shit. Oh, it actually starts to look like a useful evolution within my own neural net, with my own cognitive, to let go of that. And it doesn't bring me any joy. At this stage in my life, when I see somebody make a spelling or grammar mistake, it doesn't fill me with any joy to sort of take kind of a negative pride in my proper understanding, quote unquote, of the elementary education involved in proper usage. Like, it doesn't It, like, I don't feel like I'm better than somebody. Maybe they speak another language natively and they're better at grammar and spelling in their own language than me. But because they didn't grow up where I grew up, their knowledge of those things in my native language is lesser than, like, that doesn't give me any joy, and it would be false if it did. I think largely why I am here is to let go of the burden of judgment of any kind. Judgment is useful in early childhood development and early ego. And as somebody who, I've taken a long time to see wisdom, spirituality, cognitive science, and neuroscience, and transformer models, and all of these topics. And it's gotten me to this place where ego looks necessary and vital. It doesn't look like something you ever want to, like, a lot of people in the wisdom and spiritual game are on a mission to dissolve ego perpetually, to sort of join oneness with all, and they kind of want to throw away ego. And after much study, I've become convinced that this is not the right approach for me personally. This is not something I want to do, but that's not to say I want the ego to stop evolving. I just want the ego to evolve to a place where it's resonant with that higher state that many are eager to find for them through meditative practice and psychedelic experience and rigorous study. The ego is such a useful contextual reference. And if you can alter it through meditation, psychedelic experience, or whatever your jam is, if you can meditate on making changes, how that ego responds to shit happening around it instinctually, through like deep contemplations like this one I'm doing here. Like a lot of this really, I'm not really for you. It's like in saying it, when I go to sleep tonight, because I said these words, I'm hoping tomorrow I'll be just a little bit better at it. When I see a there spelled improperly, I want to condition my ego that I wake up in tomorrow morning, instinctually extrapolate intended usage and meaning, and let go of everything else I did around it in early and second childhood development. I want to get myself into an instinctual desire to interpret context efficiently and understand intent in my real-time ego's perception. And have to let go of language. That's not me saying we should take them out of schools. They're vital. Never would have got here without that state. I revere it. But now it doesn't serve me in any way. It doesn't bring me any joy to and my instinctual response is not to judge myself as superior because of all the reasons I stated. So I think it's best not to dwell. When you run across it and you are capable of doing the swap in real time for the word as it was intended, don't dwell. Let it go. And instead, focus on the conversation and be present with the person that's speaking with you. One of my friends said, well, you have hired people. Would you hire someone who is not able to make these distinctions? I said, certainly. Like I have a landscaping. My landscaper to speak much English at all. Don't give a shit if they understand there, and there. Of course I would hire them. And if I was doing even something that was very demanding engineering wise, and I found somebody from another country who constantly messes up there, and there, but is a brilliant engineer and can really efficiently and productively tackle a problem, I would hire them to do. Of course I would. And it would really, I mean, there are reasons within a team environment to look for sophistication and communication in the native language that will be used among the team. Otherwise, that can be detrimental and slow down a team, no matter what kind of rock star that engineer may be. These are reasons to still put value on. But I don't find myself in that kind of role anymore, and I don't want to. Fuck that. A lot of damn stress and worry. I'd much rather be doing this. Well, yeah, I choose to not give a shit how you spell there, and I want you to have the confidence that I'm always going to understand how you meant it and not judge you for a momentary lapse, because that's shitty to me. In where I am, and I don't think it's shitty when everybody does it. I think it's necessary. I used to do it, and there are places where I have to do it. But where I am in life now, if I do it, so I won't. There you go. If you're ever talking to me in text on any platform, you have my permission to fuck up spelling and grammar all you want, and I will clarify with you if I'm not able to suss out your meaning. And I think that's a kind of enlightenment. I mean, there's all kinds of enlightened perspective, and I think that's one. I like it. It's one I choose to adopt for myself. Now, if you choose to do all of this, ooh. Or if you are not able to for yourself, now I understand, and I don't judge you for it. Fine. But these are a bunch of thoughts I had on the topic that I felt were necessary or useful, got down in this process. So here I am. Okay. Tweet. Well, let's see. I've had a few the last few days. I don't tweet as much either anymore. I found a lot of times it triggers a lot of useful thought. Some guy named, or gal named Dionysian Agent, and his hand is, he's at DIONYSINAGENT. But he goes by Thermo. Thermo says, what did he mean by this? And he posts an image of like an all-seeing eye, and it says, "Once you are awake, you shall remain awake eternally." And it credits Friedrich Nietzsche. This, I responded, "When you see something clearly for the first time through wisdom gained, there is no return to the fog before that clarity. Very much like that scene in The Matrix where the dude wants to be plugged back in." Now, coincidentally, I have a couple spelling errors here. And I did use there properly, but I omitted the word the before fog, which on reread I would edit in, but fuck it. I did it wrong in the moment. But a lot of people understood what I meant and didn't call me out for it. And there's another funny one. I spelled seen as in the past tense of seeing, S-E-E-N, and I should have spelled it like the scene in a movie, which is E-E-N-E. I know that. But in that moment, I fucked it up. Now, if on the surface you saw those two mistakes and goes, well, none of the rest of the shit this guy says is valuable, then I think you would be doing yourself a disservice, because wisdom I shared here. If you were curious and forgiving enough of those two fuck ups to let yourself have it. I believe I understand exactly what Friedrich Nietzsche meant, and I described it as so. When you see something clearly for the first time through wisdom gained, there is no return to the fog before that clarity. It's very much like that scene in The Matrix where the dude wants to be plugged back in. And I think this guy's name is Schaefer. Can't remember his Matrix hand. But it's a gif of him saying, "Ignorance is bliss." And I followed up with that. But a desire to return means you still have a long journey ahead. Shaka. And then I said, to further elaborate, there will come a time in the journey where you no longer put, and I said but I meant to say put. And because it was still a word, spell check didn't correct it. And my eyes didn't see it the first pass through. See how useful this becomes when you can look past that bullshit? To further elaborate, there will come a time in this journey where you no longer put any value on material things like cars or houses, relationships that you are in to impress your friends or family, or social dramas like politics. But then, if you have not yet found authentic joy and gratitude for being, you can at times feel lonely and form a desire to re-enter the matrix or care about the trivial again. But you'll find that path is no longer available. Once you think of those things as trivial and really mean it, you see it with clarity. Why? You can't re-enter that matrix of giving a shit about the trivial. When the sports team you used to follow wins or loses, carries, and you can't inject that meaning back once you see it gone. You have to find different meaning, cooler meaning. Stick with it. That's why I said after that, best to just keep learning. Thumbs up. And somebody responded to that. 3 years ago, I did ayahuasca. That thing was a before and after in my life. Before that, I was already an awakened person. I had a different perception from the average thanks to reading, neuroscience, philosophy, meditation. But ayahuasca showed me the reality of psychedelics. They let you see. Like, it's, I believe when those magical compounds that were derived through a like evolutionary process alongside us through the blood-brain barrier of your mind, because they do that. They have the private keys. We have a similar ancestry when you go back far enough back into our lineage. Yes, trees and the mushrooms, and I forget, ayahuasca is like a combination of two. They provide a sudden perspective and clarity of thought that lets you actually experience those things that are only perception when you're in the studying neuroscience, philosophy, and meditation stage. Meditation, I think there's ways to get there, but the reading, that's you putting it all together logically. But when you actually experience, and for me, it was moderate, high dose of probably the most potent strain of psilocybin, where I actually rode around in it. Was like, oh, it's real. It's not just an idea. These are the reasons to explore those things. Should you be bold enough for a risk? I responded, well, you can. He goes on to say, and it really was like when Morpheus gave you the choice and it was really like when Morpheus gave you the choice, red or blue pill. It is very, very difficult to accept. I'm 100% out of the matrix. There are many things that do not make sense and that we do even when we are awake. Yeah. Because after it leaves, after that magical context is absorbed into your system and leaves you, you shift back to waking consciousness. It feels very similar, but with all the memory of the experience. You can integrate that experience through meditative practice. Here helps a lot. You can hang on to a lot of the revelations, insight that you got through that experience, and they can retain them. I responded to those two. I said, well, you can still participate in the matrix. No pirate signal needed or hover ship. Joy emoticon. It just no longer commands the same level of attention and is no longer able to make the same demands of how I or you emotionally respond or engage with it. Like right now, everybody is obsessed with the election in the United States. I'm not. I don't give a shit. Perfectly at peace with whatever they decide. I'll get, there's a one coming up on that topic for how I think, and just politics. Here, Richard Dawkins was responding to Jan LeCun. Jan LeCun said, perhaps, but not anytime soon, and it won't emerge by accident, but by explicit design. He was responding to somebody else. Yes. I can't go grab the context. All that. Distraction. But Richard Dawkins, him, did consciousness in human beings arise by accident or by the design of evolution by natural selection? Either way, it seems possible for consciousness to arise without explicit design. I responded to him, two in the weeds, Doc. Why couldn't it arise earlier in the process and influence the building of the quantum substrate? What influences the formation of a quantum substrate and the instantiation and the instantiating of evolutionary quantum decision making? I had to insert words because I have typos there and I don't take tweeting very seriously. Mostly I view this as journaling my thoughts. Like if I want to, like I'm really not ever trying to say anything. I'm trying to capture in a moment where I had some of my attention and how I responded to it. That's also, I'll be able to, you can go to Grok and ask him to go read your last 1,000 tweets, or it, if you like to say it, that's fine. You can ask it to read all of your last 1,000 tweets and all of the context around them, and then Make meaningful observation about the Twitter account you specify. You can do this for anybody. I find it very valuable to tweet even if you're only talking to yourself. Fine. And it will be extremely useful later. Trust me. Can such a thing arise without consciousness? A lot of people in academia, the Richard Dawkins of the world, and there's a few other accounts I follow that are sort of in this who's a good example? Like the complexity theorists that look at these emergent behaviors that are sort of cooked into the system, assembly theorists specifically. I feel like they're looking at how consciousness expresses itself and evolves right in our current model, like using the standard model to view space-time. And they're looking at that and they're seeing that as the genesis. And they're not going, well, how did we get this quantum computer everything's riding on? We know it is because we can provably test quantum mechanics. The math checks out. That is view of academia and specifically the assembly theorists. How, is that an emergent property without consciousness? Or is consciousness sort of a fundamental imperative that's riding along every layer of the onion, every imagining of the Matryoshka doll? I forget the Russian dolls that are, you got a big doll with a smaller doll with a smaller doll with a smaller doll, and you could always wrap a bigger doll around it. What if you just have this imperative that is consciousness riding every layer of the onion? I think it looks a lot more like that, and it's a lot more interesting. This is why I tend to find more value in the philosophical of that than I do sort of studying how a few simple things interact with each other and form up for joint purpose, like in a Michael Levin sort of. It's more interesting to me to go back further or deeper in the onion, or further out in the onion, however you think about it. That's what I meant by that. And let's see. The politics one. So Tushar Jain is a guy I follow. He's at Tushar Jain _ co-founder of Multicoin Capital. And in the crypto game, I think him and his partner Kyle Sumani are probably the most sophisticated thinkers. So I pay attention when they talk. And Bashar writes, politics breaks people's brains, and I don't think I'm immune from that. I have come up with some rules I will try to hold myself to for political engagement on social media. Focus on truth seeking. Try to understand why others may disagree with you. Everyone is the hero in their own mental narrative. They have a reason for their beliefs. Don't resort to ad hominem attacks, even if the person you are talking to makes them very easy. 3, don't engage with whataboutisms. Whataboutisms are a great way to distract from the actual discussion. If I violate one of these rules, please feel free to call me out. I am not perfect and I will make mistakes. Hopefully I can learn from them. I thought this was beautiful. That is an enlightened perspective of politics, but I take it a step further. And I don't know if my reply even really fit here, because he was actually providing good advice that I wanted to crank up to 11. In good advice, in my view, from my perspective, that is the right approach. And so to it, there's a way you could take what I'm about to say as almost like I'm saying you're wrong, you should do it this way. No, I loved what he said, and I wanted to compose with it and amplify it. So I responded, what's the incentive to participate even that much, Tushar? First principles, you/Kyle style, have you considered risk reward of complete disengagement rather than what you just described? Pros, 2 bullets. You're at peace completely, always, with all of it, viewing it now like a form of unproductive adult entertainment. That's how I look at politics. And all the outcomes are, well, I'll get to that. Next, I said, under the pros column, endless hours gained for productive thought to channel as you decide for your own gain or enrichment, rather than spent how the conditioning of our upbringing has mandated. Cons. Team loses 1 vote in current registered state. That's the only con I can get from my disengagement, because at this stage of my life, 3rd childhood, I realized that all of my conversations on the topic with friends, family, all of the debates, be they calm or heated, actually never impacted any of the outcomes. If you study the system our government is set up in now, somebody chooses the candidates for you, and they only give you 2 to choose from that have defined themselves as polar opposite. And either polarity cannot govern effectively because they're intentionally ignoring half of the constituents. So it's never going to be a sane outcome. And because of how it's hardwired, you're always choosing a lesser of 2 evils where somebody else picked the 2, and not evils, like 2 ineffective governors or administrators. That's what your choice must always be, the way the system is structured. Just if you look from first principles, you can never get an outcome that will be best for the total the way we've drawn it up. So it really becomes like a reality show, like Desperate Housewives or WWE. And with the current contenders, it's literally WWE. One of them has been on the actual WWE, I think, or at least I've seen the GIFs where it looks like he has. It's not something that is worthy of attention, in my view. And my disengagement only cost that 1 vote. And because the Electoral College, that it's never in my lifetime been, the closest was that Florida one with Bush and Gore. And even that came down to like 10,000 people in the vote, or even 500 people. My vote in the states I've lived in my life has been it's always been like pretty clearly decided. I'm in Arizona now, kind of a purple state, but it won't come down to my vote. So my disengagement doesn't hurt the system at all. And I even found somebody who used to vote opposite me who adopted the same perspective. So because we both disengaged, it's totally canceled out. So this entire thing just becomes like a mind virus that everyone is absorbed in that I'm always trying to do my best to not judge them for in any way, because I think it's part of our culture and it's important and it's kind of beautiful in its dysfunction in how I look at it now. No judgment in it, but I am disengaged. And it's a struggle to remain disengaged without their ire and without making them feel like I'm judging them. Those who are just about everyone who's still choosing to be sort of participant. I go on to say, are you ignoring your pledges of allegiance, or in truth, and I forgot the word in, so this whole thing doesn't make that much sense, or in truth, are you ignoring the antics of a few hundred reality show stars? I said, that shit gonna do what it do, regardless what you or I think about it. And while I find it kind of beautiful and it's comedic dysfunction, in my view, it's not really worthy of even modest attention. Right? Like, I don't want to engage with anything political. And if I see something where my words are going to be construed that way, then I look for another post in. Because I don't want to spend time correcting it. Don't put any value on that. And yeah, I find that to be a very healthy way, and it frees up your ego's ability to put its attention on more valuable, life enriching experience or education. Okay. Then my last one was with Yosha. I haven't interacted with Yosha in a while, and he said, it seems to me that the bulk of contemporary philosophy consists in writing about philosophy, while answers to the most important metaphysical questions, e.g. existence, reasons for existence, epistemological foundation, nature of mind and consciousness, remain obscure. And I responded to that. The entire space has become obsessed with impressing each other with the sophistication and complexity of personal interpretations past philosophers' works, rather than simply doing their best to compose with it all as true, or compose with it true as contextual reference and creating something new. We human, this is how we do it. Shrug emoji, joy emoji. And then I followed up, or perhaps novel/useful philosophical is alive and thriving, but is not popular, ignored because folks have been conditioned to believe that it should sound complicated. There's a distillation of years of study in this work. And I really try and do it very plain speaking. But because of that choice, it's invisible, even to folks that crave it, because it doesn't sound like it should. And that's too bad. But it's okay. Understandable. Especially in 2024 Earth. We're heated, right? So let's see. Then he said, everyone posting personal opinions on Twitter is an interesting case study in how the mind works. He was responding to Jan LeCun, who said, I'm interested in how the mind works, and he is an interesting case study. Responding to Elon Musk, or describing how he thinks about Elon Musk. Then Yosha said, everyone posting personal opinions on Twitter is an interesting case study in how the mind works. Well said! Exclamation! He's so right. That is so. Every single one of these is so. It teaches so much about. I go on to do some in the weeds engineering stuff. I was curious his thoughts on LLMs, and I'll do maybe a podcast about that, public journal. But now is not the time because that's a big topic. Raoul Paul wrote, I honestly believe that the economic singularity approaches. He said, I honestly believe that as the economic singularity approaches, we don't have much time on the clock to make money, maybe 6 to 8 years. I responded to that. If it's a singularity, this new money made will not be as relevant as it was. True singularity means a transition to abundance from scarcity for all humanity. Enjoy this last game of Monopoly, if that is the game you enjoy, but best not to get too wrapped up in it. I like FTU over DTFU. Raoul Paul famously has a trending hashtag of DTFU, which means oh, I fucked it up. DFT. Don't fuck this up. He's got it all over, all of the branding for Real Vision, and it's funny. It says a lot. I like it. But I like FTU better. I like to expect that we can't fuck this. Joy emoticon. Yeah, I like expecting that this is the singularity and we're rolling through it, and it truly does mean abundance for everyone. And while money will still have meaning and be useful, I don't think it will have near the importance it for, because we'll be in a place where labor and thought is abundant. So everyone can sort of explore their passions. And I think that'll be a real beautiful time for humanity. So the FTU feels cooler. All right. That's the end of today's journal. For anybody out there who listened all the way through this, I'm the fucking coolest. And thank you. And cheers. Have a great week. Here we go.